and welcome to the CNBC TV 18 special. A lot has happened this month. We've seen Donald Trump be elected as the President of the United States of America, and back home on the 8th of November, Prime Minister Modi announced the demonetization drive. To make sense of both these developments, as well as the road ahead for the Indian IT sector, which perhaps is at a crossroads, joining us now is a veteran of our industry, a veteran of the Indian IT industry, Mr. Narayan Murthy. Mr. Murthy, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Let me start by asking you about your view on the government's demonetization drive, sir. While economists are divided on the economic costs and benefits of demonetization, I think corporate India, whether it's CII, FICCI or the Exporters Association, everyone coming out and calling it transformational, calling it a game changer, calling it one of the most radical reforms. How do you assess the strength of this reform, sir, the risks and rewards associated with it?
Well, first of all, Shereen, it's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to speak on CNBC. I am not looking at it as a technical person. I'm not an economist. The way I look at it is the following. This is a very well-intentioned move. It has several important objectives. First is to reduce funding for terrorism, which no Indian can argue about. It's something very, very important, looking at the kind of things that have happened in the border in Kashmir. That's very, very important. That's something that we should all applaud. The second thing is, this has the potential to reduce black money. It creates a little bit of confusion in the minds of people who deal in black money. So therefore, this is a deterrent to black money. And third, in some way, in a very minor way, it is an encouragement to the digital economy. It's a very minor push, but still, lots of people, at least in urban India, would start thinking about moving to the digital channels. So on all these issues, we must realize that this move is going to benefit the nation. However, it is true that the execution may not have been as up to the mark as the Prime Minister would have wanted. But the reality is that this is a very surprise move. And number two, this is not often done, therefore the bureaucracy may not have been fully prepared for that. And finally, when a politician takes this decision, he obviously depends on the technical advice of the officials. So therefore, whatever lacuna has been there, we cannot simply lambast the ministers and the Prime Minister involved. That is the way I look at it. And there's one more important thing. For the first time in the last 30-40 years, the pace of reaction of the government to various lacunae that were pointed out by people has been spectacular. They improved, they took care of so many problems that came.
Let me move away from demonetization, sir, and talk to you about the other big development that the world has seen, and that is Donald Trump in the White House. You know, there have been concerns on whether this is going to mean a departure from the policies that the U.S. government has so far taken forward, whether this is going to mean a more protectionist administration, it's going to mean an administration that turns its back on globalization, and then the implications for India, specifically for IT. How do you view view the emergence of Donald Trump in the White House from an economic point of view, specifically when it comes to India?
You know, Michael Moore wrote a wonderful article sometime last July. You must have read it.
Yes.
And he spoke about the pain that has been faced by the industrial workers in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, etc. And he also predicted that Donald Trump is likely to perform much better than what most people thought at that time. So therefore, the reality is that we have to understand the impact that globalization has had on the lives of the poor people in America, particularly the industrial workers. Given that there is so much of import from China into the US, given that lots of companies moved out their manufacturing to China and the Far East, there was automatically a lot of disappointment amongst these people, and therefore President-elect Trump has been very successful in leveraging that disappointment to win the White House. So unless we understand that, I don't think we will be in a position to adjust to the post-election America. And insofar as the Indian companies are concerned, I think the situation is not as bad as we all think, for a very important reason. We in the Indian IT industry have the ability to design systems for American corporations so that they succeed not just in America, but they succeed in third countries. They succeed in enhancing their exports to third countries. So we are partners to the American corporations. That's number one. Number two, the only instrument we have in order to combat any anti-Indian IT industry sentiment in the US is to bring the power of innovation even much more. And I have seen this happen so many times in the last 30 years. So therefore, I am not as much negative about the impact on the Indian IT industry as most people think. I think the Indian IT industry leaders are smart. They will come out with more and more innovation, and I think they will succeed.
You know, let me ask you on two of those issues, sir. I'll come to the power of innovation in just a second. But, you know, this offshore model, and you have sort of in the past previously spoken extensively about the need for Indian IT companies to rework the offshore model. But do you believe the pressure now to do that will be significantly higher?
Well, you know, I started hiring American graduates from US colleges in 2003. We hired 300 graduates from various colleges in the US. Somehow the middle-level managers of Infosys did not leverage that great opportunity to, first of all, use their knowledge for the betterment of Infosys, and number two, to hire even larger number of graduates from the American colleges. So now the time has come when Indian companies must live up to their promise of becoming Indian multinationals. A multinational is one which will hire local talent in the markets. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect is to go with what I termed visa independent global delivery model. This is an idea that I introduced sometime in 2009, but then it gained ground in 2013 when I went back. And I said, let's reduce the effort of on-site from the then 30% to somewhere around 10%, and let's this 10% of the effort be executed by the talent that we hire in our markets. Americans in America, Canadians in Canada, UK people in UK, French people in France, Australians in Australia, etc. Then we said we would be fair to all the countries. We would have created job opportunities for people from various countries. Therefore, I am not a great believer in depending on H-1B visas. I have always said this, and I continue to say that, because if we claim ourselves to be Indian multinationals, we have to behave like multinationals. And the first responsibility of a multinational is to create job opportunities for local people in the local markets.
Sure.
That's all there is to it. Nothing more, nothing less.
Mr. Murthy, let me also take up the second point which you talked about, that Indian companies will have to focus much more on the power of innovation so that they continue to be relevant to whether it's their American clients or any of their other global clients. The feeling now seems to be that perhaps in the next few years, the pecking order is going to look very different, that very few companies may in fact survive this switch that we're seeing, the massive disruption that we're seeing in technology, that very few Indian IT companies may survive the onslaught of disruptive technology. Do you feel confident of that happening, or do you believe that, that Indian IT will survive this?
Well, I am very, very confident about the capability of the Indian IT industry and the smartness of the leaders of Indian IT companies in ushering in new innovation. God is not finished with us. There is a lot of opportunity for innovation. I don't know if you remember, Shereen, one of the physicists, I forget his name, sometime towards the end of the 19th century, he said, all that can be invented in physics has already been invented. And after that, we had quantum mechanics and we had relativity theory, right? Just to mention two. So therefore, I am not that much worried. I think the Indian IT industry has a lot of juice left in it to innovate more and more. And we will find lots of opportunities for our youngsters, because remember, in my model, about 90% of the value addition should be done from countries like India and China, etc., and maybe 10-15% from the local market. So therefore, our objective will have to be to provide job opportunities for talent in our markets, as well as to create more opportunities for talent in India, both ways. So it's all a positive story.
But that's the fear, Mr. Murthy, that as we move more towards AI, automation, etc., this industry, which has really provided jobs for middle-class India, is that going to take a big hit, a big knock?
No, I'll tell you, the whole world is moving towards leveraging of IoT, Internet of Things. We're going to have autonomous cars. We're going to have robots on a mass scale in manufacturing. There is so much of opportunity for Internet of Things, that we have to rework our education and research programs, both in our universities as well as in our own companies, so that our youngsters are well prepared to tackle new areas of opportunities. If we stick to the same old stuff that we did in the 80s, 90s and 2000s, you're right, we will not have opportunities for our youngsters. But I am very confident that if we adapt ourselves to the new situation, we'll succeed. It's all about Darwin's theory of adaptability. It's only the species that adapt themselves to the nature. They're the ones that will survive.
On that note, we are going to take a break, but when we return, we'll talk Indian IT and more with Narayan Murthy. Stay with us.